On the day I married Jiang Wenyu, Wenting was assaulted by several men in an alley. Afterwards, Jiang Wenyu held her and blamed me, saying, "Sunyan, it's your fault." From then on, his sympathies completely shifted to someone else. Later, when I was murdered and barely alive, I made one last call to Jiang Wenyu. He hung up on me impatiently. "Can't you be more understanding? Ting is scared of thunder, and I can't leave her alone right now. In my next life, I decided to do as he wished." I wisely walked away. When I was reborn, Wenting suddenly poured a bowl of boiling hot pot soup over my face. "Slut, is it fun seducing someone else's husband?" It was as if she was actually Jiang Wenyu's legitimate wife. It was dinner time and the hot pot restaurant was crowded. People around us started looking. "So, she's the mistress. But that man just called her his wife." It seems if a man is handsome, he can have as many wives as he wants. Disgusting. The mistress deserves to die. Wenting smirked, giving me a triumphant and provocative look. It was the same in my past life. She loved to create scenes and embarrass me wherever we went. If I hadn't learned the truth before my death, maybe I would have endured it again. After all, she was assaulted, became mentally ill, and both Jiang Wenyu and I bore an undeniable responsibility. "Are you okay, Nian Nian?" Jiang Wenyu's gentle voice sounded like it was from another lifetime. He carefully wiped the spicy oil from my face, however. I couldn't help but recall his numerous past accusations. "It's because of us that Ting became like this. Can't you just bear it?" This time, almost instinctively, I pushed him away. Then, I poured the equally hot spicy soup from my bowl directly onto Wenting's face. She screamed, covering her face and rolling exaggeratedly on the ground, her eyes poisoned with hatred towards me. "Does it hurt?" I found myself laughing as I watched her pain, slowly moving closer to her. My voice filled with hate barely escaping through my teeth. "Wenting, you know, I've wanted to do this for a long time." Jiang Wenyu hurriedly helped Wenting up, his face stern as he scolded me. "Sunyan, she's just sick. Why lower yourself to her level?" "Sick," I repeated the word mockingly and sarcastically, then quietly looked at Jiang Wenyu. I raised my hand and slapped him. The restaurant erupted into a commotion, and some even took out their phones to record. I took out our marriage certificate from my bag, intentionally raising my voice so everyone could hear. "Jiang Wenyu, I came here today to ask you for a divorce. Meet me at the Civil Affairs Bureau at 3 o'clock. Jiang Wenyu looked at me in shock. I didn't want to say more to him, and walked straight out of the restaurant, feeling a sense of unreality. Jiang Wenyu, Wenting, and I grew up together in the same orphanage, depending on each other for survival. My contact with Jiang Wenyu was cut off until he was adopted by the Jiang family. Later, I reunited with Jiang Wenyu in college, and we became a couple. At that time, Wenting, who was studying abroad, heard the news and joked, "You must let me be your bridesmaid when you two get married." So, I never imagined that she also had feelings for Jiang Wenyu, until the wedding day when I accidentally lost the spare ring. Wenting went back to my house to retrieve the ring but was dragged into an alley by a few drunken vagrants. By the time she was rushed to the hospital, barely alive, she kept calling out Jiang Wenyu's name. The longer she called for him, the longer he remained silent. We cancelled our honeymoon and took turns caring for Wenting in the hospital, but Wenting would go mad whenever she saw me, throwing things and crying as she sought refuge in Jiang Wenyu's arms. She was like a fragile rabbit, unable to withstand the slightest disturbance anymore. Finally, Jiang Wenyu, massaging his temples, said, "Sunyan, we owe her an apology. She only recognizes me now. Can you keep your distance from her?" From then on, his heart completely leaned towards someone else. Whenever Wenting asked, he unconditionally chose her over me. Every day after work, he would first drive to Wenting's house, returning home only in the middle of the night, sometimes not at all. What could I say? I also felt guilty. I couldn't say anything, nor did I have the right to. After the incident at the hot pot restaurant in a past life, Jiang Wenyu didn't visit Wenting for a long time. This continued until my birthday. Jiang Wenyu promised me that he wouldn't go anywhere today and would celebrate with me properly. Then, Wenting called. I didn't know what happened, but I saw the increasing anxiety in Jiang Wenyu's eyes as he grabbed his coat and ran out. Almost instinctively, I grabbed his wrist. "Today is my birthday, you promised." Jiang Wenyu looked at me fiercely, disappointed. "Sunyan, if you had gone through what Wenting has, you wouldn't speak so lightly." His words turned out to be prophetic. Not long after Jiang Wenyu left, several men broke down the door of my house. I immediately hid in the bedroom and called the police. Just after I finished calling, those men used a key to open the bedroom door. How did they have the key to my bedroom? Before I could think further, they pinned me down and began tearing at my clothes. In the chaos, I managed to call Jiang Wenyu. I knew he was at Wenting's, which was close by, hoping he could come quickly, but all I heard was his cold, impatient voice. "Can't you handle things yourself? Shouting is scared of the thunder. I can't leave here." So, he stayed because she was afraid of thunder. I only had time to give a bitter smile before the phone was violently snatched and hung up by the assailants. "Bitch." I heard an angry curse. In the last moments of my life, I told myself, if I could do it all over, I would definitely stay away from them. After my soul left my body, I found myself drifting to Wenting's house. I saw Wenting timidly grabbing Jiang Wenyu's arm, clutching it like a lifeline. Are you leaving? Jiang Wenyu put down his phone, touched her forehead and whispered, I'll wait until you fall asleep. A flicker of panic crossed Wenting's eyes as she suddenly grabbed his shirt and kissed him on the lips. Jiang Wenyu pushed her away immediately. Ting, I'm married. His tone was tinged with displeasure. Tears and a sense of unwillingness welled up in Wenting's eyes. If it wasn't for her losing the ring, how could I have ended up in that situation? Jiang Wenyu, you promised to atone to me on her behalf. You said you were willing to do anything but the final step, didn't you? Jiang Wenyu's expression stiffened, and finally, as if compromising, he closed his eyes and let Wenting kiss him again. He even skillfully placed a hand on her waist to prevent her from falling. It was as if such scenes had been replayed thousands of times. Watching him get carried away, his eyes clouded with desire, he even uncontrollably held the back of Wenting's head, deepening the kiss. A wave of intense nausea churned in my stomach, and I began to retch uncontrollably. The thunder had stopped, but Wenting was still too scared to sleep alone, so Jiang Wenyu stayed to keep her company. He made several calls to me, none of which connected, and his expression gradually darkened. Is Sunyan angry? Wenting asked. Jiang Wenyu kept a cold face and said nothing. In the middle of the night, after he fell asleep, I saw Wenting cautiously get up and go to the balcony to make a phone call. Is it done? What? Someone died. Wenting turned pale. Didn't I tell you guys just to seduce her, record a video to threaten her, and that's it? You idiots. Never mind. I can't believe I trusted you guys. I told you to just pretend to assault me for show. But you guys, it's all over now, everything is ruined. It turned out that the thugs were hired by Wenting. Even the assault she claimed to have suffered was a drama she had orchestrated herself. After my death, perhaps out of guilt. Wenting bought a plane ticket to flee the area. However, she was arrested by the police at the airport. The man who reported her was tall and looked somewhat familiar, but I was sure it wasn't Jiang Wenyu. I tried hard to see the man's face clearly, but then I lost consciousness. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn. I hadn't been away from the hot pot restaurant long when Jiang Wenyu's call came through. Sunyan, I don't agree to a divorce. Where are you now? As I held the phone. A car slowly pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, revealing a stern face that gradually overlapped with the face of the man who had called the police in my previous life. Jiang Chongning. Jiang Chongning gestured for me to get in the car. Jiang Wenyu on the phone must have heard it. His voice turned cold. Nian Nian, how come you were with Jiang Chong? I hung up the phone directly. Jiang Wenyu sent a few more messages, essentially saying he absolutely wouldn't go to the Civil Affairs Bureau today and wanted to have a serious talk with me, and he warned me not to get too close to Jiang Chongning. I couldn't help but laugh at his audacity. Jiang Chongning is the late-born son of the Jiang family patriarch, known for his cold demeanor and distant relationship with the Jiang family. Jiang Wenyu was quite fearful of his younger uncle. For many years, Jiang Chongning had been active in the entertainment industry and showed no interest in the family business. However, this year he suddenly withdrew from the industry, showing signs of competing with Jiang Wenyu for the family inheritance. It seemed to coincide with the time just after I married Jiang Wenyu, when he would often leave me to visit Wenting. Before I could even ask the man in front of me why he was here, I heard him say, I'll take you to the hospital. Jiang Chongning's gaze landed on my face. Doesn't it hurt? I was startled and subconsciously touched my face. After being reborn, filled with resentment, I had ignored even the pain of being scalded by hot soup. Now, with Jiang Chongning asking, the pain seemed to finally register, burning across my face and neck. Thank you for the trouble, I said as I opened the car door and got in. In this new life, prioritizing my own well-being was crucial. He was being kind, and there was no need for me to be overly dramatic. At the hospital, Jiang Chongning had the doctor perform a full-body check on me. Fortunately, the hot pot broth wasn't scalding hot, so I was mostly fine. After applying the medicine, I half squinted at him as he stood by the window making a phone call. If you're busy, you can head back to the office. Thank you for bringing me here today. I recalled that he rarely visited the Jiang family's old house and we almost never met. His sudden act of kindness was quite unexpected. It's fine, he said as he hung up the phone. Then, somewhat abruptly, he asked, Are you planning to divorce Jiang Wenyu? I was taken aback. He must have seen what happened at the hot pot restaurant. I nodded. I'll contact a lawyer tomorrow. He just watched me quietly, saying nothing more. Suddenly feeling uncomfortable under his gaze, I said, I'm a bit thirsty. Only after speaking did I realize I had inadvertently commanded this strict and serious man to get me water. He glanced at me and actually went. Standing at the hospital entrance, I was filled with many emotions. Just then, I happened to see Jiang Wenyu rushing over, carrying Wenting frantically. Doctor, the moment our eyes met, Jiang Wenyu froze. I turned away emotionlessly. After waiting in the room for a while and Jiang Chongning hadn't returned, I was about to message him when I heard noise at the door. Nian Nian, it was Jiang Wenyu. This afternoon, you threw hot soup in Wenting's face at the hot pot restaurant. She thought she was going to be disfigured, got a shock, and in her distress, she ran into the kitchen and grabbed a knife to slit her wrists. She's bleeding heavily now, but the hospital's blood bank is low. You have the same blood type. could you please help her? I looked at Jiang Wenyu, his eyes full of urgency, and simply said, her life or death is not my concern, can't you see, I'm hurt too. Are you still arguing with me? Jiang Wenyu strode over, grabbed my wrist with a grip that brooked no refusal and said, come with me to give blood. I had a fresh wound on my wrist, newly bandaged, and his rough pull sent a sharp pain through me, but he seemed completely oblivious. Jiang Wenyu, you have no right to force me to do something I don't want to. Jiang Wenyu's expression darkened. Sun Yan. Must I spell it out so clearly for you? If it weren't for your negligence with the ring years ago, how would Ting have suffered this misfortune? Why would I need to take care of her? If it weren't for your sudden outburst this afternoon, why would Xiao Ting resort to wrist slashing? People must be accountable for their own mistakes. Jiang Wenyu looked at me coldly. In his heart, I had always been the instigator. I struggled to suppress the surging irritation within me and retorted sarcastically. Jiang Wenyu, there's no need to dress up your infidelity as something noble. Have you forgotten that it was Wen Ting who splashed me first? She's the one who lost her mind, not me. Wen Ting fears disfigurement, and I deserve it if it happens to me. Besides, I have a heart condition. A blood transfusion could endanger my life. But of course, people like you tend to forget, don't you? Your heart has already sided with her. What's the point in deceiving yourself? Jiang Wenyu stood there stunned, his face turning pale, wanting to argue but finding himself unable. Jiang Wenyu, what if I told you that Wen Ting's assault was nothing but a drama she orchestrated herself? Would you believe it? Think about it. Why did she insist on not calling the police then? Enough. Jiang Wenyu interrupted me harshly. Sun Yan, there's no need to fabricate such absurd excuses to evade responsibility. Believe it or not, I abruptly pulled away from him and took out my phone to call the police, reporting that someone was coercing me to donate blood. Ignoring the stern look on Jiang Wenyu's face, I calmly provided the police with the hospital's address, then looked up at the man I had loved for many years. Jiang Wenyu, I'm serious about the divorce. If you don't agree, I'll file a lawsuit. A nurse rushed over to inform Jiang Wenyu that a spare blood bag had been found. Before he left me with these words, Nian Nian, I was wrong today, but I really only think of Wen Ting as a sister. It's always been you that I loved. The implication was clear. He would never agree to a divorce. Jiang Chongning entered just as Jiang Wenyu had left. There's no hot water left. I went down to the hospital to buy some wontons and porridge. He was explaining why he had been gone for so long. I naturally didn't mind. And sensing my discomfort, he said he needed to return to the office. Watching him finally leave, I breathed a sigh of relief. Then, I received a WeChat message. Jiang Chongning had sent me a business card. A lawyer who specializes in divorce cases, with a good success rate, never lost a case. Me, still, I politely thanked him. Thank you, uncle. After a long silence, he replied, since you've decided on a divorce, there's no need to call him uncle anymore. During the period I prepared to file for divorce, I stayed in the hospital to recover. Jiang Wenyu visited me many times. His tone was soft and his attitude sincere, promising to send Wen Ting abroad for treatment and to cut off contact with her. I just called the security to have him removed without showing any expression. That night, Wen Ting suddenly messaged me, do you think you've won? I'll tell you, he got drunk last night, and we slept together. Who knows? I might be carrying his child now. Then she immediately withdrew the message. After staring at the screen for a few seconds, I replied, remember to take precautions in the future. If you end up having a child with the same diminished brain capacity as you, it would be quite unfortunate. That's really your fault. The day I was discharged from the hospital, Jiang Wenyu came to see me, saying he was willing to discuss our divorce but on one condition, that I attend his mother's birthday party. My mom has always liked you, and she's been unwell lately and would like to see you. Once the party is over, we can talk, he said. I agreed. The birthday party for Zhang's mother was a lively affair, attended by relatives from the extended family. Sun Yan is getting more and more beautiful. If only my family had such a virtuous daughter-in-law, amid the compliments from the relatives. I noticed that Jiang Wenyu had apparently not informed his family about our plans to divorce. Hey, isn't that Chongning? Doesn't he usually avoid these gatherings? What brought him here today? Yeah, he and Wenyu have never gotten along. He must be here to stir up trouble. What trouble can he cause? Unless he plans to steal his wife. Haha. Just as I took a sip of my drink, I saw Jiang Chongning, surrounded by admirers, tall and leggy. He stood out in the crowd. His gaze swept over me, emotionless. I nodded politely at him. He just stared back at me, his expression unreadable, then coldly shifted his gaze away. What a strange man. What is he angry about? Sun Yan, a voice sounded by my ear. Jiang Wenyu, impeccably dressed, greeted me with a gentle smile. Mom is waiting for you in the hall. Let's go over, he said, extending his hand. Just then, a figure swiftly appeared and skillfully took his arm. Wenyu, I've been looking for you for a long time. It was Wen Ting. I was surprised that Jiang Wenyu had brought her along. Does this mean that the Jiang family has accepted her status? Jiang Wenyu's smile faded, and he quickly removed Wen Ting's hand, explaining to me with slight unease, Sun Yan, don't misunderstand. I just smiled. Jiang Wenyu, we're about to divorce. Who you bring to the family dinner is your choice. When Ting's displeasure was evident on her face, I changed the subject. Bringing a fool like her, though, that's quite a surprise. When Ting's face turned ashen, her gaze, filled with malice, fixed on me. Her eyes then fleetingly moved to the wine glass in my hand and she eerily smiled. Enjoy yourself today, Sister Sun Yan. Instinct told me something was off, so after exchanging pleasantries with Zhang's mother, I planned to find an excuse to leave early. It seemed unlikely that Jiang Wenyu would discuss our divorce today. He probably just tricked me into coming for his mother's birthday. Heading to the restroom, I suddenly felt an inexplicable heat surge through me, realizing what Wen Ting had done. My legs weakened, and I staggered, leaning against the wall, as I felt dizzy. A hand suddenly covered my mouth, and then I lost consciousness. When I woke, I was in a strange room, my mouth sealed with tape, my limbs bound. I could faintly hear a conversation. She's been drugged by me. When you guys go in, make sure to record a video, remember? Later I will bring everyone over to catch you in the act. Make sure to leave some marks on her body. I struggled to open my eyes and saw Wen Ting talking to several men at the door. Their appearance. They were clearly the men who broke into my house and killed me in my past life. This should be something that happens years later. Why is it happening so much sooner? And this is the Jiang family's home. Has Wen Ting lost her mind? After Wen Ting left, those men started arguing over something. Footsteps approached from outside, and seizing the opportunity, I lifted an ashtray with both hands and hurled it fiercely at the door. Bang. The dull sound of the ashtray hitting the door made the footsteps outside hesitate. What a bitch. This action clearly angered the men. They cursed and approached as they had in my past life. But before they could do anything, the door was smashed open. Through the haze, I seemed to see Jiang Chongning's face. Furious. Jiang Chongning. When I opened my eyes again, the restraints on me were removed, and only Jiang Chongning was left in the room. I tried to stand, but my legs gave way, and I stumbled forward. Instead of the expected pain, I fell into a warm embrace. I grabbed his collar to steady myself. Help me. I saw his Adam's apple bob. Sun Yan. I tried to calm myself down and finished my request. Take me to the bathroom. Jiang Chongning stared at me for a long time, perhaps contemplating, then quickly pushed me into the bathroom. The cold water poured over my head, barely suppressing the heat in my body. Are you okay now? Jiang Chongning asked from outside the door. I opened the bathroom door a bit to show I was somewhat better but still a bit embarrassed. The atmosphere was awkwardly delicate, as if casually. Jiang Chongning asked, did you come to the banquet today intending to forgive Jiang Wenyu? I denied directly. How could I? It's impossible between him and me now. Then I told him what had happened. Maybe it was just my perception, but I noticed a barely detectable pleasure in his demeanor. Suddenly, voices and numerous footsteps came from outside. I just saw Sun Yan enter this room with a man. I must have seen right. The voices grew closer. In a panic, without thinking, I pushed Jiang Chongning into the bathroom. The door was thrown open with a bang. The first to rush in was Jiang Wenyu. Behind him, led by Wen Ting, were almost all the guests, and there I was, my face flushed, my clothes still damp with droplets. Marks from my struggle with those men were still visible on my body. It was hard not to let people speculate. Everyone wore an incredulous expression, murmuring quietly, my God, what's going on here? Who would believe nothing happened? The Jiang family's so-called good daughter-in-law turns out to be a harlot. Someone, craving more chaos, whistled at Jiang Wenyu. That's a big green hat you're wearing there. Jiang Wenyu seemed furious, his gaze fixated on the red marks on my neck and wrists. Without any question, the next second, a slap landed heavily on my face. I was knocked to the ground. The cold and jealous voice of Jiang Wenyu almost burst through his teeth. Tell me, who is that bastard? But in a flash, I stood up and slapped him back hard, fueled by the anger of 2 lifetimes. I used all my strength, delivering 3 slaps to Jiang Wenyu. My sharp nails scratched his skin, leaving several fresh red marks. He touched his face, his gaze fixed on me, a mixture of pain and anger, as if these were the only words he could utter. Who exactly is it? Suddenly, the bathroom door was flung open. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Jiang Chongning emerged from the bathroom, a cold sneer on his face. Jiang Wenyu, to raise your hand against a woman, you really have some nerve. His voice tinged with indescribable fury. I hadn't expected Jiang Chongning to appear at that moment, and I was frozen in place. The atmosphere abruptly turned silent, followed by a chorus of gasps, a wave of shock rippling through the crowd. Was it you? Jiang Wenyu's eyes were bloodshot, his expression ferocious as if ready to kill. Jiang Chongning, seducing my wife. He swung his fist violently towards Jiang Chongning's face, but Jiang Chongning dodged to the side, leaving Jiang Wenyu to stagger and fall clumsily to the ground. Jiang Chongning looked down at him from above. After all these years, you haven't progressed at all. Jiang Wenyu's eyes reddened even more as he yelled, I will kill you. He sprung up and lunged again. Both were tall men, but Jiang Chongning was slightly taller and visibly more robust, making the outcome quite apparent. Jiang Chongning easily dodged and then landed a heavy punch on Jiang Wenyu's face. This punch is to teach you to respect women. While Jiang Wenyu was still stunned, Jiang Chongning grabbed him by the collar and landed several more punches, each hitting hard. This punch is to remind you to be loyal to your marriage. This punch is because you slandered an elder without knowing the facts. The scene was dead silent. No one dared to intervene, and Jiang Wenyu was the only one being attacked. After what seemed like an eternity, Jiang Chongning finally stopped and rubbed his wrist, looking up to meet my gaze. It was as if he was asking, "Do you feel better now?" I stared at him, at a loss for words about how I felt. "Wenyu, how are you?" Only then did Wenting rush to Jiang Wenyu, who was now bruised and bleeding from the corner of his lips. But Jiang Wenyu didn't look at her, his gaze fixed on Jiang Chongning, his emotions swirling, his eyes unexpectedly welling up with tears. "If you wanted the company, I could have given it to you. Why did you have to take Sun Yan away from me?" Seeing his self-proclaimed deep love, I felt no sympathy. Even a bit disgusted, Jiang Chongning coldly stared back at him. "Today is your mother's birthday party, my sister-in-law's celebration. You think I would mess around with your wife at this time? Has your brain been eaten by the woman next to you?" At these words, not only was Jiang Wenyu stunned, but Wenting's face also turned extremely ugly. Jiang Chongning scoffed coldly, his gaze sweeping over everyone. I was just passing by this room when I saw several men dressed as waiters attempting to harass Miss Su. They saw someone had discovered them, and before they could do anything, they hurriedly fled. Anyone with eyes could see the signs of a struggle in the room, notice the tape and ropes on the floor, and see the red marks on Miss Su's wrists and ankles. The crowd, as if blind. "If you really are blind, you must at least have ears." Jiang Chongning turned to me, his voice resonant. "Miss Su, you have evidence, don't you?" Startled, I quickly understood his implication and pulled a voice recorder from my pocket. It wasn't hard to guess. Before I went to the bathroom earlier, I took out my recorder to keep it from getting wet, and Jiang Chongning must have seen it. Yes, just to be cautious. I had been carrying the recorder with me ever since I agreed to attend the banquet. When Wenting and those men conspired against me, I started recording. Now, it has indeed proven useful. The moment she saw the recorder, Wenting turned deathly pale. She lunged to snatch it but was firmly restrained by Jiang Wenyu, who grabbed her arm and demanded, "What are you afraid of?" I took pleasure in watching her terrified expression as I pressed play. The next second, the recorder clearly broadcasted Wenting's chilling voice. "She's been drugged by me. You guys go ahead and take advantage of her. Make sure to record a video. Remember, I'll bring everyone over later to catch her in the act. Try to leave more marks on her body. Make her look like a slut." The room fell into a deathly silence. Wenting collapsed to the ground, reaching out tentatively to grab Jiang Wenyu's hand. "Wenyu, bitch." Jiang Wenyu slapped her fiercely, his fingers trembling. "Yes, we wronged you back then, but do you hate Nyan so much that you'd arrange for her to be violated? I've tried to make it up to you as much as possible. What more do you want?" He almost roared these words. "Because I want you to love me like you loved Sun Yan." Wenting's face was as pale as paper, her expression bordering on madness. "Do you think I don't know that every time you kiss me, you're thinking of her? I can't stand it. Jiang Wenyu, we grew up together. Why did you fall in love with her? What does she have that I don't?" The room erupted in chaos. Did I hear that wrong? Isn't this just an affair? I suddenly felt somewhat grateful that Wenting wasn't too bright. I spoke up. "Today, I came to the banquet because Jiang Wenyu previously agreed to discuss a divorce with me. The reason we've come to the point of divorce is that he cheated with Wenting, but I didn't expect that Wenting, in order to expedite our divorce, would go as far as to drug me. If it weren't for Jiang Chongning's intervention, I might really have been ruined." I lowered my eyelids and gave a bitter smile. Scornful, mocking, and disdainful looks surged towards Wenting like a tide. A mistress will always be a mistress, with such vicious intentions, not to say it out loud. But Chongning, though only 3 years older than Wenyu, is more steady and reliable, and also the true son of the old master. He seems more suitable to take over the Jiang family. Indeed, has anyone called the police? This woman staying any longer really sullies my eyes. What about those men? They shouldn't be allowed to get away. Just as I was about to speak, Jiang Chongning's deep voice sounded behind me. "I've already called the police, and those people have been caught." I looked up at him. Jiang Chongning gave me a reassuring look. Those people had tampered with the hallway surveillance earlier, thinking they could just escape over the wall from the rockery and get away with everything. What they didn't know is that after a recent burglary, the Jiang family had installed surveillance outside the wall too. The external cameras captured their license plates, and I just received the news that the police have apprehended them. Upon hearing this, Wenting was even more agitated than before and fainted. When she woke up, the police had arrived, according to the confessions of those men. They identified Wenting as the mastermind behind the planned rape. The police also uncovered another incident. The alleged assault on Wenting years ago was also orchestrated by her. As the police took her away, Wenting screamed with all her might, "I'm a victim too. I hired them back then, but they betrayed me and truly violated me. That's why I hate Sun Yan. If it weren't for her, none of this would have happened to me. I swore to get revenge and make her feel the pain I went through. Wenyu, only you can save me now. I love you so much. Everything I did was for you." The moment Jiang Wenyu learned the truth, he was struck like lightning, completely stunned. After a long while, he turned to look at me slowly, rigidly. Nyen nyen. I calmly watched his pale face, and the pain and confusion slowly welling up in his eyes. He was crying. It was as if countless words were stuck in his throat, unable to be voiced. Finally, they turned into endless regret as tears filled his reddened eyes. Suddenly, I remembered an incident from the orphanage. On my 8th birthday, I really wanted a bottle of cola. That day, Jiang Wenyu had disappeared suddenly. The head of the orphanage searched for a long time and was about to call the police. When he finally returned, he was covered in bruises. He took off his jacket, handed me the cold cola he had kept against his chest, and with a smile wished me a happy birthday. He immediately winced from a cut at the corner of his mouth. Later, I learned that he had wrestled with some kids outside, and the prize was a bottle of cola. That day, I received a second gift. 7-year-old Wenting, tears streaming down her face, smashed her little bunny piggy bank to use her saved-up pocket money to buy me a 2-inch strawberry-flavored cake. Because of that cake, when a wealthy family came to the orphanage the following year after Jiang Wenyu was adopted and left, and the head asked if I wanted to go with them. I looked at the timid yet hopeful Wenting beside me and gently shook my head. So, Wenting left with them, and I stayed in the welfare home until I was 18. Times change, and none of us remained as we once were. Finally, I said to Jiang Wenyu, maybe at first, you were compensating Wenting, but you gradually developed real feelings for her. There's no need to deny it. The moments of abandonment and the sleepless nights are proof enough. People change. And clinging to a forced relationship will only make me loathe our past memories. Jiang Wenyu, let's let each other go. Jiang Wenyu never gave in, and I eventually had to pursue a divorce. Fortunately, the lawyer Chen, introduced by Jiang Chongning, was reliable, and I became his 106th successful divorce case. I received a significant share of the assets, which I used to register a company. I spent nearly several months recruiting and setting up. 3 months after the divorce, I finally found some free time to invite Jiang Chongning and lawyer Chen to dinner. In the evening, I saw Jiang Chongning's car at the company entrance. Congratulations on your new beginning, he smiled. Since lawyer Chen was friends with Jiang Chongning, we often had dinner together during the lawsuit. Over time, I came to understand Jiang Chongning's true character. He appears cold but is actually a man of great taste and refinement, holding firm views and principles on many matters. He seldom smiles, but when he does, it's mesmerizing. Just like now, I briefly lost myself in thought and found that I was already sitting in the passenger seat of Jiang Chongning's car. As I looked at his sharply contoured profile, my brain kicked back into gear, feeling a bit embarrassed. You said lawyer Chen isn't joining us for dinner today. Yeah, he's got a blind date. Oh, my curiosity was piqued. He's a talented young man with a successful career, and he still needs to go on blind dates. Jiang Chongning rested one hand on the steering wheel and turned his head slightly towards me with a half smile. You think highly of him, I blurted out without thinking. Lawyer Chen is handsome, any girl would be smitten at first sight. And what about me? His gaze was deep and unreadable. My heart skipped a beat, and I stuttered, WH what? Jiang Chongning turned his gaze away, casually unbuttoning the top 2 buttons of his shirt, revealing a sliver of his elegant collarbone. Never mind. After dinner, Jiang Chongning and I walked by the river. Specks of starlight scattered across the water, creating patterns of light and shadow, while a gentle breeze rocked the small boats. Do you want to take a boat ride? Jiang Chongning suddenly asked. It had been a long time since I last took a boat ride, so I agreed. It wasn't until we were seated in the boat that I realized the atmosphere was subtly charged. I couldn't pinpoint exactly what was different, but everything felt laden with undercurrents. Jiang Chongning sat opposite me, his long legs casually crossed, his posture relaxed yet refined. Even in such casual settings, he looked as if he had stepped right out of a medieval European painting. I suddenly remembered. Back when he hadn't yet left the entertainment industry, he was once dubbed the dream prince every girl wants to marry by the media, trying to break the awkward silence. I brought up this fact, laughing. Back then, I was scrolling through Weibo out of boredom and voted for you, considering we're relatives. Later, a dormant account retweeted my post about you, which really startled me. A dormant account. Jiang Chongning's voice dropped a notch. Yeah, one day it just started following me. No profile picture, no posts, no details. It liked every post I made. If that's not a dormant account, what is? It was surprising because that was the only post it ever shared. The one saying you were the dream prince every girl wants to marry. If I didn't know it was a dormant account, I might have thought it had a crush on me. Haha. Jiang Chongning fell silent. I started to feel restless, sensing that something was about to happen. That red lantern on the shore looks nice. I want to take a picture. I grabbed my phone and stood up quickly, trying to change the subject. Unexpectedly, I lost my balance, and before I could even react, I fell forward into a pair of cool arms. I found myself sitting on Jiang Chongning's lap, his arms encircling my waist from behind, while my hands involuntarily rested on his chest. I could feel his heart pounding fiercely under my touch. Breath held. I stared wide-eyed at him, in the dim, ambiguous light. His features were sharp, his eyes intensely focused on me, his warm breath faintly brushing against my nose. He looked into my eyes, word by word, he said, Sunyen, that was my alternate account. I've liked you, for many years. I was stunned, until Jiang Zhongning drove me home and left. I was still somewhat dazed. It was not without my noticing every little interaction with Jiang Zhongning, like snapshots, replayed in my mind, that day. Coming out of the hot pot restaurant and coincidentally bumping into him, he took me to the hospital, rescued me in time from those men, stood up for me against Jiang Wenyu, supported me through my divorce, and even reported Wenting in my past life. The signs were everywhere. But why? Beyond the confusion and daze, my heart seemed to skip beats. I've liked you for many years. Jiang Chongning's trembling confession echoed again in my ears, just now, as I stared blankly at him. He suddenly smiled and said, It's okay, I can wait. Suddenly, I felt my face grow warm. Nian Nian, a familiar yet strange voice came from behind. I turned around and saw Jiang Wenyu standing under the moonlight, silently watching me. His complexion was pale, with faint dark circles under his eyes, his cheeks much thinner, his figure like withered branches in autumn. Did he just bring you back? Are you two together now? It was clear who he was referring to. I looked at him coldly. What does it have to do with you? Jiang Wenyu's face turned as white as paper, his head drooping in sadness. I've been having the same dream every day. I dreamed that back in the hot pot restaurant, you didn't retaliate but held back. When Ting became more and more presumptuous, and I became more absurd, on your birthday, I left you to take care of Wen Ting, who was scared of the thunder. In the middle of the night, those men Wen Ting hired. Jiang Wenyu seemed unable to continue. Gathering courage to look up at me, his voice tangled and nervous, trembling with self-doubt. Is it true? I didn't answer, my fists clenched at my sides, just calmly watching him, like the snap of a kite string. His eyes suddenly reddened. So, it's true, Nian Nian, every time you face something painful, you clench your fists so hard that your nails dig into your skin. No matter how I tried to stop you, you kept doing it. His tears started to flow. So, Nian Nian, it really happened in a past life. That's why in this life you wanted to divorce me. You just wanted to save yourself. He covered his eyes with his hand, but tears still streamed down through his fingers. What did I do back then? I went to Wen Ting when you needed me most. I hung up your call when you reached out for help. How sad and desperate you must have been, even in this life. I still urged you to endure, forced you to donate blood to Wen Ting. Didn't believe you. And slapped you without understanding the situation. I'm so sorry, truly sorry. I listened to his confession, my face pale and quiet. Nian Nian, whether you believe it or not, I've always loved you. I never liked Wen Ting. I felt only guilt and obligation towards her, and now it's just hatred and disgust. Jiang Wenyu wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, took a few deep breaths before he could continue speaking intermittently. I know you'll never forgive me in this lifetime. I won't forgive myself either. I will find my own way to. I'm here to make amends. Have you said enough? I looked at him expressionlessly. If you have, then leave and never show your face to me again. I never want to see you again in my life. Jiang Wenyu silently glanced at me once more, then forced a smile uglier than crying. All right. Before he left, he told me one last thing. When I first came to the Jiang family, I accidentally caused Jiang Chongning to be almost kidnapped. He went missing for 3 days and nights and was only found on the 4th day. That's why he has always hated me. I'm not sure if his getting close to you and taking you away was to get revenge on me. Soon, Jiang Wenyu voluntarily gave up his inheritance rights to the Jiang family and suddenly disappeared from everyone's sight. Meanwhile, Wen Ting was diagnosed with a pregnancy while in prison, was granted bail pending trial, and was taken back to the Jiang family by Zhang's mother. The first night Wen Ting was brought back to the Jiang family, Jiang Wenyu returned. In the middle of the night, he stabbed the sleeping Wen Ting in the stomach with a fruit knife, killing both her and the unborn child. He has now been apprehended by the police. When Jiang Chongning told me this, I was still taken aback for a moment. Do you feel sorry for her? I shook my head, whether in my past life or in this one. Wen Ting always wanted me dead. Her end can only be described as self-inflicted, a case of evil begetting evil. If I were to pity her, then who would pity me from my past life? Jiang Chongning paused, then asked, What about Jiang Wenyu? I raised an eyebrow, staring at him for a while until he slightly averted his gaze, and then I calmly said, I feel nothing for him anymore. Jiang Chongning's brow relaxed. Oh, during this time, my relationship with Jiang Chongning was somewhere between friends and lovers. He picked me up from work every day, we had dinner together, and on weekends we would go traveling. He even used his connections in the entertainment industry to get me VIP tickets to a concert of my favorite singer, which included interactive sessions. The interactive song was called Liking You. That day was the first time I knew Jiang Chongning could sing. His voice was deep and magnetic, like a lover whispering, repeatedly touching my heart. As for the suspicions about Jiang Wenyu at that time, of course, I wouldn't rashly doubt Jiang Chongning's intentions towards me. If he really wanted to take revenge on Jiang Wenyu, why did he silently stay by my side in my past life, and only in this life, when he heard I was getting divorced? Did he dare to show his true feelings? Moreover, I clearly remember that in my past life, when Wen-Ting was finally arrested, the tears on Jiang Chongning's face were real, and the sorrow and sadness in his eyes were genuine. Still, Jiang Chongning must have other secrets he's keeping from me. He doesn't want to talk about them now, and I won't force him. I thought it would take a long time to learn this secret, but the opportunity came sooner than expected. That day, while climbing a mountain, I sat down exhausted and declared I couldn't walk anymore. Jiang Chongning laughed, ruffled my hair, and then bent down. "I'll carry you." I wrapped my arms around his neck. "Then I won't be polite." After settling in, Jiang Chongning picked up the bag and carefully walked along the mountain path with me on his back. His back was straight and strong. I smelled a faint fragrance on him, pleasant and enveloping, softly surrounding me. Strangely, this scene felt familiar, as if it had existed in my memory before. "Actually, you once carried me on your back like this." Jiang Chongning suddenly spoke up. "Go on," I said, all ears. I was about 11 or 12 years old at that time. My brother and sister-in-law hadn't had children for many years, so they went to an orphanage and adopted a child about my age, Jiang Wenyu. When he first arrived, he was restless and uneasy, always thinking about going back to the orphanage, saying he needed to find someone named Nian Nian. My sister-in-law asked me to take him to school, but he ran away halfway there. That day I was kidnapped, and everyone thought I had disappeared while I was out looking for him. After pondering for a moment, I decided to tell him. "Jiang Wenyu said that you approached me because you wanted to take revenge on him." Jiang Chongning paused, then burst into a wry laugh. He really knows how to flatter himself. Back then, I was always seen as a well-behaved and sensible child in their eyes. Perhaps the more I was restrained, the more I wanted to rebel. After confirming he had returned to the orphanage, I went to an internet cafe for the first time, to play games, I asked, surprised. Jiang Chongning hummed an affirmation, but after realizing that playing games wasn't as fun as I thought, I left. I was kidnapped when I passed by an alley. They took me to a house in the mountains. The person who brought me meals was a little girl with a small face and naturally curly hair. Memories from long ago surged into my mind, and I tentatively asked, "Were you very dark-skinned at the time?" Jiang Chongning chuckled, unable to hold back his laughter. "At that time, to avoid drawing attention, they smeared several layers of soot on me." I was surprised, and then it dawned on me. There was a grandmother in the mountains who often visited the orphanage to see me. She was sick at the time, and I temporarily moved in to take care of her, but I knew she had a son who was fond of gambling, and it was likely that he wanted to kidnap Jiang Chongning for ransom, but I really don't remember the situation very clearly at that time. What happened after that? After that, Jiang Chongning suddenly smiled. "I told you it was my birthday and asked if you could take me down the mountain. I offered to treat you to cake. You happily agreed, asking if it could be strawberry flavored. You even asked if I could throw in a bottle of Coke." I paused, then also smiled. I had been injured in the leg by them and couldn't walk down the mountain by myself, so you helped me to the mid-slope and then carried me down. To be honest, I've never seen any girl work so hard for a cake and Coke. You were sweating, your legs were bending, your whole body was shaking, but you still clenched your teeth and persevered, finally getting me down the mountain. Speaking of this, Jiang Chongning paused, his voice suddenly filled with a hint of regret. After getting down the mountain, I wanted to keep my promise to buy the cake, but when I discovered those people were following us, I had to hide first. I saw them frantically burning your arm with cigarette butts. It must have been painful, but you didn't make a sound. I quickly asked a waiter to call the police, and when I came out to find you, you had already disappeared. I unconsciously looked at my own bare arms, indeed spotting a faint scar on the inside. Since then, I've always wanted to find you, to make sure you could see me. I gave up the Jiang family inheritance and chose to enter the entertainment industry, working my way up step by step, until I reached the highest and most visible position. For all these years, it seems like finding you has become the goal of my life. My life will only be complete once I have finished it. It was just another meeting, but it happened to be at your wedding with Jiang Wenyu. That was the first time I experienced the feeling of heartache. It was also at that moment I realized that my obsession with you had turned into fondness and love, but all I could do was to keep my distance and silently watch you. Later, when Jiang Wenyu was unfaithful to your marriage, I was furious, but powerless. I had no choice but to leave the entertainment industry and remind him through battling over assets that he couldn't afford to give me any leverage, hoping he would treat you better. Later on, you took the initiative to ask him for a divorce. Sun Yan, although it might be somewhat unethical, I was quite pleased. Jiang Zhongning said this with a deep voice and a hint of mirth, clearly more than just a little happy. My face slowly turned red, and I finally made a decision that I had been hesitating over for a long time. In another life, I just want to live well for myself. If someone genuinely and passionately likes me, consistently, and I like him too, then why not give it a try? Finally reaching the foot of the mountain, Jiang Zhongning said, "Sun Yan, I still owe you a strawberry cake and a bottle of Coke." I leaned my head gently against his back, speaking in a soft voice, but clear enough for him to hear. "Then you're sentenced to treat me to strawberry cake and Coke for a lifetime."